Hello and welcome once again to the video. Continuing my series where I look at the careers of drivers, individual drivers. I think I've done, how many have I done now? About 10, 12, I think. Was Vettel the last one, or was Raikkonen the last one? Or was Tournbay the last one? I did do Patrick Tournbay just after he died. Anyway, today I'm doing Riccardo Patrese. Riccardo Patrese. Such a long-lived, a driver that had such a long career. Nothing compared to these days with Alonso, Hamilton and Raikkonen and Schumacher and Barrichello and Button. But back in the day, 16 years, which is how long his career was, well, about 16 and a half years, I think, roughly. That was a lot. A lot of races as well, even though there were only, for most of the years he was in F1, there was 16 races a year. So, with the occasional 17, but most would have been 16 with some fewer than that as well. But he still managed to rack up a record-smashing number of races. So let's put down Riccardo Patrese. Now, he has such a long career that my normal one page of notes that I take to do these sort of videos, I've got 3 pages. They are small pages, they're not A4. I think they're smaller than A5 as well. But anyway, but normally I have 1. I've got 3 because of his career being so long. Riccardo Patrese, and I was 6 years old. Let's just put here, first race, shall we? Let's just put this down here now already. First race was Monaco, 1977. And his last race, oh, I'm really messing up there. Last race was Australia, 1993. That was back when the Australian Grand Prix was the last race of the season. And indeed, to this date, I say this every now and again in videos, the Australian Grand Prix is the only Grand Prix to have had 2 on the trot. Yes, I know what you're going to say. Silverstone in 2020, Austria in 2020, but they were not called, Bahrain as well in 2020, but they were not called the same thing. There was the British Grand Prix and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, and there was the Austrian Grand Prix and the Styrian Grand Prix, and there was the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Sakhir Grand Prix. Whereas here it was Australian Grand Prix, followed by Australian Grand Prix. And that was because the Grand Prix changed from being the last race of the season to the first race of the season. So the last race in 95 was Australia, and the first race at Adelaide Street Circuit. The first race in 96 was Melbourne. Actually, I've been told it should be pronounced Melbourne. An Australian commented on my channel and said it should be pronounced Melbourne. Yeah, Melbourne was the first race in 1996, so not within the same season, but nevertheless 2 Australian Grand Prix, officially named Australian Grand Prix, on the trot. That's the only time that's ever happened. I've got a little bit of tea here. As usual for me, it's actually no, this isn't ginger tea this time. This is citron tea this time. I don't drink normal tea. I don't drink coffee at all, and I don't drink normal tea. Okay, right. So where are we going? Yeah, so he was born, let's just put that there, shall we? 17th of April, 1954. 1954. It's incredible to think that he is about to turn 72 years old. Riccardo Patrese. See, I grew up with him. The first race, because it was in 1977, I was 6 years old. And his last race, I was 22. So for me, Patrese was always there. He was always in F1. And I remember in the early 90s, it being amazing to think that he was racing back in the late 70s, because that felt like a long, long time ago when I was in my early 20s. Okay, so let's write down his stats, shall we? Starts. He's Italian, by the way, in case you didn't know. 256 races, but he did have a DNS. Wins 6. Podiums, a massive 37, considering he only had 6 wins. Poles 8. Fastest laps 13. So I need to get cracking, actually, because I don't want this video to be, say, longer than half an hour, really. I'm trying to keep it down. So I've done that. I'm going to have to keep glancing at my notes. Okay, now, let's just talk about the length of his career. 256 races. He got past... who was the previous? The previous record holder was Jacques Lafitte on 176 race starts. And Jacques Lafitte drew level with Graham Hill on 176 at the British Grand Prix or European British Grand Prix no, it was the British Grand Prix, wasn't it? British Grand Prix of 1986. But he had a big accident at the start of the race, and it ended his career. So he never did the 177th. So Jacques Lafitte stayed level with Graham Hill until Riccardo Patrese blew past him. And Patrese was the first, let's write this down, first to reach 200 starts. Silverstone in 1990. I was there. I don't remember whether or not I was aware that it was his 200th race start, but I was there, devastated by Mansell's retirement. He would have won that race. He was also first to reach 250 race starts. Where was that? That was sometime later, 1993. I haven't written down when it was, but it doesn't matter. It's only 250. But actually, it must have been 1993, of course, because he did 256. So it was sometime in 1993, yeah. So he was setting all those milestones. Oh, and he held the record for the most starts for 19 years until Barrichello in Turkey 2008 got past him. Rubens Barrichello in Turkish Grand Prix of 2008 went past Riccardo Patrese's 256 race starts. 19 years he held the record for. Very impressive. Okay, so what are we going to do? Shall we list down? I'll tell you what, let's list down his wins first. So his wins, or should we go, no, let's go straight away from, let's start off with his, no, let's put the wins, let's do the wins. I'm just going to write the wins down so they're there to refer back to. His 6 wins, so we can write them all down. Monaco in a Brabham, 1982, that famous race. 1983 was South Africa, again in a Brabham. 1990, San Marino. The wonderfully named, if inaccurately named, San Marino Grand Prix. And then 1991, I remember this one very, very well. In fact, I have it recorded. I recorded it on VHS at the time, Mexico 91. Mansell had a problem with the car, fell 30 seconds behind. I think I did a video on this particular Grand Prix. Fell half a minute behind his teammate, and then it got rectified, the problem with Mansell's car. So he charged back at Patrese and cut the lead down from 30 seconds down to just 1.5 seconds as they crossed the line at the end. Exciting finish. Also in 1991 was Portugal. Now, Mansell had a problem, didn't he, in that race, didn't he? His wheel came off, I think. He was leading, came in for a pit stop, came out and his wheel came off, allowing Patrese to win. 1992, Japan, again in a Williams. Right, now this gap here, you see this gap here. Let's focus. I will tell you what he did from 1977 when he entered Formula One in a moment. But look at this, look, this gap here, all right, this gap there is a 99 race gap, basically. And it is, to this day, the largest gap between race wins for any Grand Prix driver. '99 race gap. Now, of course, if Alonso was to manage to win a race in an Aston Martin, don't laugh, I'm talking about maybe sort of next year or something. If Alonso was able to win a race in an Aston Martin, that record would get absolutely thrashed. You'd have to put like a 2 in front of it or something, you know, because Alonso's last race win was 2013. But that's the only threat that I can think of at the moment to this record, the only immediate threat. Because Patrase's career is, you could pretty much talk of his Brabham days and his Williams days. Yes, he was in other teams before Brabham, but it's and after Williams, but it was basically Brabham and then Williams. And Williams was really when he had his main success. He was very good in 91, I remember. Very good, especially in qualifying. His one-lap speed was incredible in 91. Anyway, so let's go to... Right, so in 1976, I'm going to go pre-F1 a little bit. 1976, he was both the Italian F3 and Euro F3 champ. I'm going to squeeze that in because I'm going to write down here and I'm going to write along down there as well. Yeah, he was the champ in both of those. And because he did so well, in 1977, halfway through his F2 season, then F1, for Monaco, yeah? So halfway through his F2 season, they thought, wow, this guy's awesome. Let's chuck him into F1. So he got into F1 with the Shadow team. Shadow. Now, I remember that team because I was sort of like looking at Formula One a little bit in the late 70s, but also I had a Top Trumps pack. That was mostly where I knew about these cars. And so I knew about the Wolf team, and I think Penske were messing around in F1 at the time as well. Shadow. I particularly liked the Shadow car because it was a British car, apparently. And yeah, I had this Top Trumps deck. And that's where I specifically remember, because I didn't start following F1 properly till 1982. Before then, it was the odd race that my older brother would watch, and I would sit down and watch the British Grand Prix, things like that. But so I mostly remember Shadow from this pack of cards, basically Top Trumps cards I had. Right, so he was in the Shadow. And then in 1978, he moved across to Arrows. Now, he was offered a drive at Williams. His teammate at Shadow was Alan Jones, and he was offered, along with Alan Jones, the drive at Williams. Alan Jones went to Williams, but Patrese decided to go to Arrows. And of course, 2 years later, Alan Jones would win. Well, the following year, 1979, Williams would win their first Grand Prix. Jones would take a few at the end of the season, and then in 1980, Alan Jones won the championship. What might have been for Riccardo Patrese had he gone to Williams? Who knows? But he didn't. And there was also, in 1978, of course, Italy, 1978, was that big moment for Patrese, which sort of, was a cloud over him, possibly still to this day. And that was how he was blamed by some drivers, some people. He was blamed for the big accident that took the life of Ronnie Peterson at the Italian Grand Prix in 1978. Peterson didn't die immediately. He died, it's like a day later or something. But Patrese was the one mostly blamed for the accident. He was cleared because there was an investigation, and he was cleared. But in some drivers' eyes, he was always seen as being the one at fault. Which is a bit rough, really, because it was at the start of a Grand Prix. All sorts of things are happening at the start of a Grand Prix. To blame someone right at the start of the Grand Prix is a bit rough. But there were some very prominent Grand Prix drivers that always, forevermore, basically, blamed Riccardo Patrese. But there you go. It would have been called a racing incident, just like it would do now at the start of a Grand Prix. But because someone died, suddenly then blame starts getting thrown around. But the fact that someone died doesn't make anyone more to blame than if no one had died, But anyway, you can read all up about that separately. And the Italian Grand Prix of 1978. So nothing much happened after that, and in 1982, we're skipping forward suddenly quite a bit because nothing really happened. 1982, he moved to Brabham to be Nelson Piquet's teammate, the defending world champion Nelson Piquet. And in 1982, he actually finished ahead of Piquet in the championship. Let's just put that down because that's quite something. Finished ahead of world champion Piquet in the championship. Well done, Patrese. Let me have a little drink. Okay. 1983. And we have Brabham again. Yeah, so the Brabham, 1983 Brabham, proved obviously to be a championship contender. 1983, that was that strange event that just highlighted how much the Italian F1 fans were just cheering Ferrari and not Italian drivers, which is of course different to every other country in the world, and understandable, really. I think I'm sure if I was Italian, I'd be the same. Because in the San Marino Grand Prix, Riccardo Patrese was leading his home race. Italian Riccardo Patrese in the Brabham was leading his home race, and then he retired. I can't remember exactly how he retired. I thought he spun out at a chicane, but I might be wrong. I don't want to infer it was his mistake if it wasn't. But of course you can still spin out even if it's not your mistake. But anyway, he retired, and Patrick Tambay took over the lead in the Ferrari and went on to win the race, and all the crowd cheered when Patrese retired, I should say. When Patrese retired, the crowd went wild with excitement because the Italian had retired in Italy, allowing the Frenchman in the Ferrari to come through and win. So that's the clearest example of how Ferrari fans are very much so behind the team and not the driver. So now we go on to 1984. And we have him in Alfa Romeo. He left Brabham, went to Alfa Romeo, where absolutely not a lot happened. I think he might have had a second place, from what I remember looking at the results before doing this video, because this is not all coming from memory. Some of it is, some of it isn't. That's one thing that isn't. Anyway, so 1985, he was also at Alfa Romeo, and Monza 84, actually, Monza 84, so I should have had that up there. Oh dear, never mind. Monza 84 was, he finished third, he finished on the podium, and it was the to this date, the last podium for Alfa Romeo. They haven't had one since. And he got that podium. He was in fourth place, and he got that podium because his teammate retired, Eddie Cheever, retired from third place. So they would have been third and fourth. Very strong showing. Right, so 1986, he went back to Brabham again. With De Angelis. And it was in 1986 that Elio De Angelis died, of course, in a testing accident, wasn't it? But anyway, he was a good driver, De Angelis. And then De Angelis had been Nigel Mansell's teammate at Lotus in the early 80s. 1987, he was with Brabham again. And then 1988, Williams with Mansell. Now, being a Mansell fan, you know, this is very, very strong in my memory. And this particular time that they were teammates in 88, Mansell would thrash Patrese. Not so much in 91. Well, later in 91, yes, but the first half of 91, not so much. But in 1988, he was thrashing Patrese, Mansell was. And they had the Williams, they had the Judd engine. Was it what was it, a Judd Ford engine or something? And it was very unreliable. Mansell only finished 2 races, wasn't it, all year long? 2 out of 16, and they were both second places, and I was at one of them. British Grand Prix in 1988 was my first Grand Prix that I ever went to. The ticket, on the Sunday ticket to get in, just to sit on the embankment, was £20, and that felt like a lot, basically. I went with my dad, and he paid the £20 because it was such a lot of money. But you compare that to what it is now. 1989, Williams again, of course. And he had, this was a very good year for him, very strong year. He had 6 podiums, 4 seconds, basically 4 times second, 4 second places. He was 3rd in the champs, and of course he led the Brazilian Grand Prix, the first race of the season. There was a bit of chaos at the start. I remember I've watched the highlights of the race so many times, and Thierry Boutsen's side mirror comes off, doesn't it? I remember, on the Williams, and hits Gerhard Berger, doesn't it? So Boutsen has to come into this is at the start of the race. Boutsen has to come in to have his thing fixed. Berger was, I think, wiped out by the side mirror in his Ferrari. Ayrton Senna chugged to a halt after about, I don't even know if he got to the first corner. So that left Patrese, Prost and Mansell basically left in the race. Patrese retired not long after, and then it was between Prost and Mansell. And Mansell beat Prost, although Prost apparently did have problems with his gearbox or something. And Mansell won won his first race in a Ferrari, his very first Grand Prix in a Ferrari, when everyone was expecting the Ferrari to retire. It would be similar to Aston Martin winning in Australia this year. Everyone was expecting the Ferrari to not go the distance because of its new revolutionary semi-automatic gearbox that Ferrari had very cleverly come up with. And Mansell apparently even had a flight booked that meant that he would have to leave the track sort of halfway through the Grand Prix to get to the flight. So they had to cancel his flight because his car didn't retire and he went on to win. That was also Johnny Herbert's first Grand Prix, and he was 4th. Derek Warwick was 5th, only about 10 seconds off Mansell winning the race, and Warwick had problems in the pits. If Warwick hadn't had those issues, Derek Warwick in an Arrows would have probably won that Grand Prix. That was an amazing race. I've watched it so many times since I recorded it off the TV in March 1989. Great stuff. Right, so what are we looking at now? Oh yeah, so 1990. So yeah, very good performance by Patrese. 3rd in the championship in 1989, ahead of Mansell in the Ferrari. But Mansell had so many retirements, and he only ever finished on the podium. Mansell finished 6th. I'm talking about Mansell all the time, aren't I? But it's difficult to talk about 1989 without mentioning Mansell. Patrese finished ahead of Mansell in the championship, not by much, a few points, but all of Mansell's points came from podiums. He finished 6 races, 2 wins, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. No other finish. And his teammate, Berger, just had 3 finishes all year, and they were at 1 win, 1 second, 1 third. So Ferrari had 9 podiums that year, and no other finishes. Every other result was a retirement. Really strange. Really good car, but terribly unreliable, the semi-automatic gearbox. 1991, Patrese's strongest year. He dominated Mansell out. Now I'm going to put here, obviously it's at Williams again. I'm going to put out-qualified Mansell up to Silverstone. I remember this. Every single race. I'd forgotten it was every single race until I read it in preparation for this video. But I do remember Patrese just constantly out-qualifying Mansell in the first half of the season. I thought, what is going on? Mansell should be blowing Patrese away. Patrese put in some good performances as well. Winning the Mexican Grand Prix for starters. Although that was down to Mansell's car issues, because Mansell closed right in on him at the end. But Patrese was awesome. His 1-lap performance in qualifying was definitely better than Mansell for the first half of the season before Mansell started to pick it up. Also, Mansell started to have a few less troubles in the race, and he strung some wins together, and then he was comfortably ahead of Patrese in the championship. Finished way ahead of Patrese. in the end in the championship. But he had 2 wins, of course. 2 wins for Patrese in Mexico and Portugal. Although both of those, Mansell had an issue. So as I mentioned earlier with Portugal, when I think Mansell's wheel came off coming out of the pits. And that, I mean, it was for Mansell's championship challenge, it was good that Patrese won the race because it meant that Senna in the McLaren didn't win the race. But anyway, there you go. So I've done 2 of my bits of paper already. If I recorded everything down, I think I've recorded everything down. Japan, 1977, 1982, Monaco. I didn't mention the win in 82, did I actually? That win in Monaco. Oh dear, what have I done? I'm blocking this area now. Monaco 82, oh my goodness. That was the famous win, of course, where Patrese took over the lead. Did he take over the lead? Yeah, I think he took over the lead after Prost retired late in the race. Prost leading after Arnoux retired earlier in the race. His teammate Prost then led in the Renault. This is the first Grand Prix that I ever watched, by the way, from start to finish live. What a race to pick. Monaco 82. And yeah, Prost retired late in the race, a few laps before the end. Patrese then, I did do a video on this actually. It's in my races playlist. But Eddie Cheever then came through, and someone else. Who was the other driver that came through? Was it Peroni? I think it might have been Cheever. Not Eddie Cheever, de Cesaris. Sorry, Andrea de Cesaris in whatever car he was driving. And Didier Peroni in the Ferrari. They came through because Patrese did take over the lead, but then had an issue with his car. I can't remember what it was. He started to run out of petrol or something, which meant so he had to slow up, which meant that de Cesaris and Peroni both got past, and then de Cesaris and Peroni both retired on, I think, the last lap. Maybe one of them was the penultimate lap and one of them was the last lap. But anyway, they both, I think, fully ran out of petrol on the last lap, I think. And then Patrese sort of like came through very slowly to win the race. And Derek Daly was involved as well, somehow, I think, right at the end before he ran out of petrol. It was an absolute farce in the last few laps. And Patrese came through to win his first Grand Prix. I might have got those details slightly fuzzled, but I think that's basically correct, what I said. Peroni should have won it. Prost should have won it, but didn't. He crashed out. He just had a big accident. Peroni, I think, ran out of petrol on the last lap. De Cesaris ran out of petrol on the last lap. Derek Daly was running in second place or something. He ran out of petrol on the last lap. Patrese, who was running out of petrol, managed to keep his car going along slowly and won the race. Amazing result. Anyway, so I think I need to... Oh, he was also, I forgot to mention, runner-up in the World Sports Car Championship 1982. So, where do I write that? I'm going to write it here, 1982. Runner-up. World Sports Car Champs. With 8 wins. There's a runner-up with 8 wins, flipping heck. Okay, so let's go across. I need to... Right, okay, just bear with me because I need to... I think I've pretty much covered all of that, yeah. So we then jump to... I'm just dealing with the notes. I'm just turning the page of notes over. 1992. Let's write it down here. At Williams again. But he had 1 win. He was completely wiped out by Mansell. 8 poles, so his qualifying was still very good. 6 seconds because the second places because the Williams was so good. But he only had that one win, which would have been Japan. So towards the end of the season, Mansell just raced away. Patrese was second. So Patrese, it's his best year in the championship. However, he was totally destroyed. He finished, I think, 56 points behind Mansell. Bearing in mind you only got 10 points for a win back then, so 56 points between teammates. It's quite a lot. But he was runner-up, but really his best years were 1989 and 1991. Third in the championship in 89. And 1991, he was very good in qualifying up to halfway through the season, and he did win 2 races. So 1992, runner-up, yes, but a bit like Barrichello being runner-up in the Ferrari in the early noughties. The car was pretty dominant in 92. 1993, let's put it down here, shall we? No. Let's put 1993 up here then. Now, he moved to Benetton. Now, I didn't know this, or I had forgotten it, but apparently he could have stayed at Williams because he believed that Senna and Prost were coming to Williams, that they were definitely coming to Williams. They wanted to come to Williams, both of them. So he thought, right, Senna and Prost, no one's going to choose me. The Williams team are not going to choose me, so I'm obviously leaving. Mansell left because he didn't want Prost as a teammate, although, well, that's what we heard at the time because of the political shenanigans that Mansell believed Prost would be up to, and I think Prost was a little bit political. Mansell wasn't particularly happy with that. Whether or not he actually definitely didn't stay at Williams because of that, I don't know, but there was a lot of discomfort at the thought of Mansell and Prost being in the team. Mansell decided, I'm gonna leave, and he went off to IndyCar. Prost came into the Williams, and then Prost had something in his contract that said that Senna couldn't be his teammate. So therefore, Senna did not go to Williams, stayed at McLaren for 93. So Patrese could have stayed and was offered the seat to stay at Williams. He was offered by Ligier, a seat by Ligier. He was offered the ride at Williams. But he decided that because he had said he would go to Benetton, he felt, I can't stitch up Benetton now. Poor old Flavio Briatore. You can't stitch up an upstanding citizen like Flavio Briatore. So he felt, I can't go back on the deal. I have to go to Benetton. So he turned down that 93 Williams drive, and of course the Williams was pretty dominant in 1993. It was only Senna that managed to do anything in 1993, and that was just because it was Senna. Basically, Senna's teammate that year was Andretti, and I think he was dropped with 2 or 3 races to go before the end of the season, and replaced with the young upstart Mika Häkkinen. But it was just Senna that was chipping away at Williams in 93. Williams were pretty dominant. Benetton were not. So Patrese joined his young, fresh teammate Michael Schumacher in his second full season in Formula One. Michael Schumacher, already a Grand Prix winner at the Belgian Grand Prix the previous year. So it didn't go great, so boom, he retired at the end of the year. He just thought, why not? He was offered also drives for 1994. Once, again, he had a chance to go back to Williams. When Senna died, San Marino in 1994, Patrese was offered that drive, maybe straight away from the next race. I didn't know this, so I looked it up. But he decided to stay retired because he had already retired at the end of 93. and he was offered the ride to come out of retirement, but he decided not to. So that drive went to David Coulthard. David Coulthard's debut was the following race, Monaco, after Senna's death. So what did he do after that then? So he retired, but then in 1997, he did the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, didn't this, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't this used to be called Le Mans 24? Le Mans 24 Hours. In more recent years, it's the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But wasn't it just Le Mans 24? Sorry, I don't know. It's a bit, 24 Hours of Le Mans is a little bit long-winded. It's a bit like, I don't know if you've noticed, but in sporting events now, when you get what used to be called the second round, if there's 16 teams or 16 players in a second round, it's not called the second round anymore. It's called the round of 16. Or the one before that would be the round of 32. Or the round of 64. Why can't you just call it first round, second round, third round, quarterfinals, semi-finals, final? What's all this round of 16 nonsense? Round of 32. Anyway, that's suddenly started now, last few years. And this sounds a little bit like that, 24 Hours of Le Mans instead of Le Mans 24. Anyway, yeah, he took part in that. Where did he come in that? I don't actually know. It's not on my notes where he came in that. The other thing he took up was show jumping, believe it or not. I mean, I seem to remember that. It did ring a bell when I read it. Because his daughters, both his daughters, took part in equestrianism, basically, so of which show jumping is a part. Now, he won an amateur championship, won at amateur level, then retired. His son also got into show jumping as well. Amazing, big show jumping family, the Patrases. 2005, he took part in the pretty woeful GP Masters Championship, and due to funding, there was only actually one race there was supposed to be about 10 races in the championship. There was one, the South African Grand Prix. I remember watching it. Mansell won it. Fittipaldi was second. Patrese was third. But I remember watching it. GP Masters. And there was another GP Masters the following year in 2006. Well, I think there was just 2 races and then it folded. In 2018, he did the Spa 24 Hours. The 24 Hours of Spa. Alongside Loic, is that how you pronounce it? L-O-I-C. Loic Depailler, right? Who was the son of Patrick Depailler, the Formula One driver in the 70s. Patrick Depailler, I'm sure, would have raced alongside Patrese in Patrese's early career. And here he was racing alongside Loic Depailler. Yeah, so his son has done F4 and a little bit of show jumping as well, I think. I'm just going to write down there. I was trying to decide whether or not to write alongside Loic. Anyway, I liked Patrese. I always liked Patrese. I always thought he's a good bloke. And James Hunt used to always be a little bit negative about him when he was alongside Mansell, but that might have all been down to the Ronnie Peterson thing in 1978. Who knows? But I always liked him. He was a number 2 driver always. He was never a proper number 1, but he was very fast in the first half of 1991 in qualifying. He was immensely fast. Race pace, he was always slower than Mansell the first half of 91, but qualifying he was right there. And he was a good, solid, reliable driver, just like Thierry Boutsen, Alessandro Nannini, Maurizio Gugelmin. Those 4 drivers in the late 80s, in 89 specifically. Nannini, Boutsen, Patrese, Gugelmin, they were always there or thereabouts in sort of 2nd, 3rd, 4th place. But they were not Prost, Senna, Mansell, you know. Piquet had lost it by 89, really. I mean, he was in a terrible Lotus, Piquet was, in 89, but he'd lost his mojo by then anyway. I think he just lost interest. But at his best, obviously, Piquet was a champ, you know. He's a bit of a cheeky, naughty monkey now, but back then he was a super champ. So there you go, Riccardo Patrese, someone from my childhood and early adulthood. Always there in F1. Sad when he went, basically. He's one of the F1 drivers that I would like to meet, that I would like to sort of, you know, chat to and stuff. I mean, obviously, for bragging rights, I would rather meet Alain Prost because he's a 4-time world champion. So that would be a bigger thing for me to brag about if I got stuck in a lift with Alain Prost. But if it's just down to personality, I'm not knocking Prost's personality. I'm just saying that Patrese, despite not having won the championship, I would like to sort of sit and have a chat with him. You know, he's one of those that I've always thought well of in that regard, you know. So there you go. I think I've covered everything that was on my list. It's been quite a long video, 48 minutes, dearie me. Right. Hey, there's no Grand Prix at the moment, so you know, spend 2 hours on a Sunday watching this instead. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and if you'd like to subscribe, please do so, or please do so. Subscribers, let's go. Or comment on the video, or like the video, or even leave a tip on the thanks button below the video. But basically, thank you for watching. Oh, I'm supposed to say tick that notification button, aren't I? I'm supposed to say that. I never do. I'm supposed to say that, aren't I? Tick that notification button so that you know when the next video. I think most of you know anyway, because I always keep the same release time and day. Okay. Thank you very much, and until next time, goodbye.